Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into one of the single greatest upsets in the entire history of sports, the absolutely incredible story of the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team. We're actually going to start at the very end with that iconic broadcast call that just etched this game into our collective memory. Those 5 words, they perfectly captured a moment that felt, well, impossible. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how that miracle happened. Okay, let's dive right in. To really truly get the scale of this upset, you have to understand who they were up against. The Soviet Union's national team wasn't just good, they were an absolute dynasty, a seemingly unbeatable machine. Just look at these numbers. The Soviets were on this unbelievable tear, winning 4 straight Olympic gold medals before the 1980 Games. Over 16 years, their record in the Olympics was a mind-boggling 27 wins, 1 loss, and 1 tie. They were, for all intents and purposes, unbeatable on the world stage. And it's not like these were close games either. They were just crushing everybody. A goal difference of plus 131 over 4 Olympics? That tells you everything you need to know. Most of their games were total blowouts. They were playing a different sport, it seemed. And if there was any tiny, lingering sliver of doubt about how the 1980 Games might go, well, that was probably erased just 3 days before they even started. The 2 teams played a warm-up game in New York, and the Soviets just dismantled the U.S. team, 10-3. It wasn't just a loss, it was a beatdown that pretty much confirmed what everyone already thought was inevitable. So, if the Soviets were this undisputed Goliath, who exactly was David in this story? Well, the answer was a hand-picked roster of college players and amateurs. The difference between these 2 teams was just night and day. The Soviet players, yeah, they were amateurs, but really, they were state-sponsored athletes. Their job was to play hockey year-round. They were pros in everything but name. The U.S. team, on the other hand, was the youngest in the entire tournament. The average age was just 21. They were, quite literally, a bunch of college kids. Now, the team's coach, Herb Brooks, he was brilliant. He knew they couldn't outskill the Soviets. It just wasn't possible. So his strategy was kind of revolutionary. He wanted to create a new, hybrid style of American hockey, take the toughness of the North American game and blend it with the speed and finesse of the European game. But to do that, his team had to be the best conditioned squad in the world. So he drilled them, relentlessly. He made them do these brutal skating sprints he called Herbies, pushing them right to their physical limit. And this quote from one of his players, man, this says it all about Brooks's genius. He wasn't just some tough guy, he was a master psychologist. He understood that to have any chance against the Soviets, his team needed to be more than just physically tough. They had to be mentally unbreakable. So he pushed them right to the very edge. But he knew exactly when to back off. All right, so the stage is set. Let's get to the game itself, February 22nd, 1980 in Lake Placid, New York, and see how this incredible David versus Goliath story actually played out on the ice. Right from the start, the U.S. team shocks everyone by just hanging with the Soviets. The first period ends in a 2-2 tie, which is a victory in itself. But then, the Soviet coach, Viktor Tikhonov, does something nobody, and I mean nobody, could believe. He pulls his starting goalie, Vladislav Tredev, who was widely considered the best goalie on the planet. It was a move that just screamed frustration, but it backfired spectacularly. Tikhonov himself would later admit it was the turning point of the game. Taking out the legendary Tretiak sent a wave of panic through his own team, and it gave a massive jolt of confidence to the Americans. So we head into the final period, and the U.S. is down 3-2. They need a spark, and they get one. At the 8:39 mark, Mark Johnson slips one into the net. The game is tied. Then, just about a minute and a half later, the team captain, Micah Ruzioni, gets the puck and fires a wrist shot that zips past the new goalie. The place goes absolutely insane. For the first time all night, the U.S. is in the lead, 4-3, with exactly 10 minutes left to play. And what came next was what fans still call the longest 10 minutes in sports. The Soviet machine, now completely stunned and desperate, just unleashed a furious, non-stop assault on the American goal. They threw everything they had at them. But those college kids, they bent, they scrambled, they dove in front of pucks, but they did not break. They just held on, desperately, as those final, agonizing seconds ticked off the clock. So the final buzzer sounds. It's pandemonium. The U.S. had beaten the Soviets. It was unbelievable, a true miracle. But here's the crazy part.
the thing a lot of people forget. They hadn't actually won the gold medal yet.
Yeah, I know, it sounds weird, right? This is probably the biggest misconception about the miracle on ice. You beat the unbeatable team, you should get the gold. But beating the Soviets was this monumental, historic step. It just wasn't the final one. See, the key thing to understand is this. This wasn't a single elimination tournament. The medal round was a round-robin format. That amazing victory against the USSR was huge, but it only put them in a position to win gold. To actually finish the job, they still had to beat a really tough team from Finland 2 days later. But after this euphoric, emotional, once-in-a-lifetime high of beating the Soviets, the young American team, they came out flat against Finland. They looked totally drained, physically and emotionally. And against a tough, disciplined Finnish team, that's a disaster. Incredibly, they were trailing 2-1 heading into the final period of the gold medal game. The miracle was literally about to slip away. So Coach Brooks walks into the locker room, sees how dejected they are, and delivers this famously intense line to just shock them back to life. And man, whatever he said, it was the ultimate wake-up call. The team came roaring out for that final period, playing with that same fire they'd had against the Soviets. They scored, then they scored again, and then again. 3 unanswered goals to storm back from the brink. They had come from behind one last time. They didn't just win the game, they seized the gold medal. The miracle was complete. So why are we still talking about this one hockey game from over 4 decades ago? Why does it still resonate so deeply? Well, because its impact went so far beyond just the ice rink. I mean, the accolades really speak for themselves. The team was named Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year. The victory itself was later voted the single greatest sports moment of the entire 20th century. This wasn't just a win. It was a cultural touchstone that launched the careers of so many of the players on that team. And you know, the game's lasting power is just perfectly captured in these 2 moments. On the left, you've got that famous Sports Illustrated cover that didn't even need a headline. The image of pure, unscripted joy said it all. Everyone knew what had happened. And then on the right, 22 years later, there's that same team, now middle-aged, reunited to receive one of the highest honors in sports, lighting the Olympic cauldron to kick off the 2002 Winter Games. You know, in the end, the miracle on ice wasn't just about the final score. It was about a team of college kids who defied impossible odds. It was a story of belief set against a tense geopolitical backdrop. It was just this perfect moment in time that reminds all of us that sometimes the underdog really does win, which kind of leaves us to wonder, what defines our own miracles?